I know there's a lot of stuff going to be discussed here, and I'll look forward to all that, but something that I haven't heard addressed is security. Our house is up at the end of a dark street where there's nobody living right now, and maybe I spend too much time on Facebook, but there's people breaking into places. There's a fella here, Don, he had a bunch of tools stolen the other night. There's thieves and there's looters.
We did have overnight security in both the North and South Ruckle communities up until a couple days ago.
We're not actually in our homes. We're working on them, but we're not in them.
Yeah,
My door can't shut.
At night, that's when the thieves come out.
Yeah.
There also is, though, there is Citizens on Patrol, and there's some other organizations like that.
Here on, I think July 31st is far too long to wait for soil samples to be done in North Ruckle. We need answers now.
The Ministry of Environment committed funds to hire a qualified professional to assess sort of like big scope of things, what happened, how much water came through, how much contaminants may have been released, or what was documented about what was released, and what that means in the big picture in terms of water volume as well. And from those cards, with the concerns that go to that email, the consultant or qualified professional is going to collate that information, develop some sort of themes, and then with their research to understand the volume of water as well as the amount of potential contaminants or whatever contaminants that were documented in that water, how that would have played out in terms of quantification, and assess that towards guidelines. So if there was reason to believe there was a large contamination, we would be approaching this more aggressively, but we want to confirm that with the big scope and picture first before we move forward with a giant sampling plan.
4 days of sewage pumped in from the city to North
There's
Ruckle
also-
without an escape.
And it's
After
an
the water
average-
went down.
That's an average of 2,500 cubic meters close to at this time of year, which would be like an Olympic-sized pool for 4 consecutive days.
When you get those comments into that mailbox,
We don't, excuse me. Yeah, it's
The library-
It's just so,
It's
it's
all
4
together.
weeks, that's so much longer.
This
Wait,
is another 7 weeks down the road.
Question, would you like to buy my house in North Ruckle and get your family there?
Time is of the essence. So if you could make those wheels turn faster,
So-
that is essential to the results that we're looking for.
So it was coming out manholes and in
in
this
the
area
houses.
for fording.
Yep.
All flood water is contaminated. Regardless of what you're dealing with, you're going to assume that there's contaminants in flood water. Yes, it was sewage, but the precautions we gave you to wear N95 masks, to wear gloves, to wear boots, to wash your hands before you eat, to shower before you carry on with other activities, those type of things, those are all the same precautions you take regardless of what you're cleaning up. Okay, so that will protect you.
And for how long do we have to do this?
Well, until you pull out the wet stuff, right?
Okay, the wet stuff's gone out of the houses, but how about the yards?
So your yards, like Candace said, there will be some detailed testing happening. But my take on the yards as far as the sewage goes is that sewage is natural. Okay, so the dogs and cats and whatever, they use the yards, right? You're normally. So, it's soaked into the ground, right? There's natural bacteria, there's UV, all of that stuff works on the soil. So I'm not concerned about
Why are they not doing any soil samples if you guys are not
for
concerned?
sewage.
Because they're not concerned.
I'm not concerned about the soil and sewage.
Yeah.
The soil is
But we're
designed to
dealing with
teach
commercial
treat.
sewage from the hospitals, all the
Yeah.
everybody. There's
So those are not bacterial concerns. Those are
But we
chemical
have
concerns.
concerns.
So those chemical concerns are what Candace is talking about, and the two are different.
You didn't hesitate to say it's okay to go back without any information. They're going to take another 6-7 weeks before they even decide where to test.
Were there any samples taken
None.
Of what?
of the water or the soil? None at all. So you're making an assumption.
and
We're basing it
You're
on.
making an assumption without facts.
We base it on the information that we have on floods. So there's flood water is contaminated. So
You're going around.
somebody,
you're going
well,
around
somebody
the
had
question.
said, why don't
Can
you
answer
trust?
the question?
Yes,
No samples.
No
were taken.
samples.
No
were
samples
taken.
were taken.
So you're saying that without pertinent facts, you're making an assumption that it's safe.
we are basing
So
it
you're gonna
on.
be held for liabilities for that if somebody
So,
gets sick and
that's right.
contamination and stuff?
So we can
Are
go
you
on
guys
your
gonna
word
hold
that
the
it's
bill for
totally
that?
safe.
I never said it was totally safe. I
I
said you
have-
need to
I'm
protect
sick with
yourself.
cancer, and you want me to move back? You're telling me it's
absolutely
okay.
not.
Around my house, there's still soil that hasn't dried out yet. It's growing. It's like a living, breathing cover over top of my yard that's growing. Okay, and it doesn't matter if you throw sand on it, it'll stop growing. If it's in the sunlight, it just keeps festering and festering and festering. Now you're telling me that's safe? Is there E. coli
Could be.
hanging around?
It's sewage.
Okay, is a mask gonna take care of E. coli? No.
Well, if you don't eat it, you'll be fine
Yeah.
with E. coli.
So I think we're getting into a whole bunch of stuff here, but I am
That's
hearing
how
what
you
you're
get E. coli
saying.
is by ingesting
So,
it.
So that means.
Sorry, I just
touching
wanna,
the ground is
I wanna
illegal,
clarify
right?
one thing. Material Health does have those numbers and where they were. So we did provide numbers so that there was some basis. It wasn't just, completely shot in the dark.
Numbers of what?
Numbers of the volumes of contamination in different areas.
Is that
So
posted somewhere?
you're telling us that you took some samples? How did you
No,
know the
it's
numbers?
We do take samples.
How did you know the numbers?
We got them sampled and sent away to a lab in Kelowna.
Carol?
I want to know how we can stay here, rebuild, what reassurance have we got that the flood won't happen again?
Or what protection
Are we gonna have the dikes rebuilt before next spring? We felt safe until this year.
So did everybody else, honestly. This was a devastating event, which we have never, and nobody even in the province has experienced something like this. So I feel and I understand where you're coming from, but you cannot expect the city to give you any kind of assurance that this won't happen again.
But are we going to get assurance from the city that you are going to repair, maintain, and perhaps increase the height of the dikes?
That's an element that we can't give you an assurance, but we're working on every element surrounding this particular problem.
Yay!
So how did it go setting up your business here in Grand Forks?
Well, it was great. At first, honestly, like, we really liked it. It was a nice little town. Like, people are really friendly and stuff. Like, they really love, like, loving people. And I like the, you know, like, small communities. We met a lot of really great people, and it was nice.
Yeah.
And she likes it, too. Like, she was born here. If we could work, it would make so much difference. Like, it would be so much more easier. But the fact that we can't work and we need to rebuy all the equipment and I don't know, it's just,
Yeah.
you just try to find like, but where do I start? I need to buy equipment first so we can tattoo, but to tattoo we need a place for it. So it's like, which one do you buy first?
Did you get on the list for the credit union helping businesses?
They did help us actually. But again, it kind of just help us keep up with the bill, right? Like nothing went to actually buy anything. You just need to pay insurance and this and that, and there's so much stuff that you need to pay that.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, you got a few $100 to order stuff, but I think we need thousands. I can just buy and be like, well, you know, for that compressor, I'll send you like $300. But I mean, I don't care.
Yeah.
You need to have like the $6,000 and boom, pay it. It's easy when you're sitting in your living room, like, and your brand new couch, like you're feeling, you look at them on TV, oh my God. But then try to like swipe all that away and I tell you tomorrow morning, you got fuck all of that left. You need to rebuy it all with $5,000. And that's not, my daughter don't have a bed, she don't have toys, she don't have clothes, she don't have anything. I don't either. My dog don't. Even I know it sounds stupid, but my dogs are part of the family too. I paid tax all my life from Canada. I need help right now. We had a disaster. I tried to go and apply for, how's it called? Some sort of like assistance. And they don't want to give it to me because I'm a business owner. Even though my business is fucked. But I paid tax all my life here. We're lucky that, I mean, we got really good people here and they help us and like we're plugged on the house and stuff like that. And like we do have a lot of people that want to help us for that and it's nice. But you can't live on people's property. Like.
And so if the government had done something different, if the organizations, how would you have liked to have seen things go differently?
Well, I think the first thing they should have done, it's literally like work on housing for people. Like not even giving money to people, give them houses, give them a place to live. There's a bunch of field everywhere. Bring some of those profab home, work them there. Here, you guys can live in it. Like even co-live with other people. Like I would totally do it right now. Like, but at least you get like, you know what I mean? Like you get an actual place, not just park in a camper somewhere. Because I know I'm not the only one. We're hundreds of people that are like that, and it seems to be fine for them. Like when you go to the Red Cross, and then they go, okay, so where do you live? Well, in my travel trailer. Right away, oh, okay, well, you're fine. And it's like, no, we're not fine. Like, that's not a way to live. It's a travel trailer. You're supposed to stay it for 2-3 days, like a week.
So I've been interviewing people and doing research on what was the cause of the flood. People have been talking about this berm or that dike in the city not maintaining
Oh, no,
them.
not the city. That's not even a question. I called them last year to tell them my dike was giving up, and they almost called me crazy. Like, oh, the water's never gonna go on top there. No, you guys are totally fine. And the bank was already like huge crack in it, giving up at some place, because it's that bank right there. And when it was actually happening, like the water was seeping through and it was coming in the street, and we had to feed, and we kept calling, like, you guys need to come right now. Like, you guys need to do something. And literally, they came and they dropped huge thing of sand, loose sand, just drop it with the truck and left. Yeah, maybe last year that was something you wanted to do. They came and did it after the flood. So I don't know. I'm not an engineer. Like that's not what I do for a living. But I know the simple rule of loose dirt gonna wash away with water. It's not gonna hold anything. Just been a plastic bag as storage. That's pretty much part of our fridge because the fridge in there is too small. So yeah, a little bit of everything. The swing that we managed to save. My daughter loved that thing. And so you got my living room, you got my sleeping area, you got my kitchen. That's pretty much, don't look at the mess because we don't have room to put anything, but that's pretty much what we've been living in. So we got the playroom, Kiana's room, my room. We need to store what we kind of managed to save from the flood for the studio. That's pretty much my bedroom, how it looks. We can't use it because it's stored a bunch of stuff in it. You can't really use the kitchen area either because you need it to store everything. Did you say hello? I think it's been really hard for her too. Like, just, I don't know, like she want to play and everything and do stuff, and just like everything around is so gross. Did you say hello? Say hi. Hello. We're lucky, honestly. Like, she's been the one that's been holding us in. Like, honestly, if you would know that. If you even know, like, you're just her little smile, I'm any person, we're like, that's what I needed.
I live right on the dike, and the dike broke right beside my property. And there was a bit of a dip in the dike earlier, and I mentioned it to the city, but nobody did anything. But that's not where it broke. It broke right where they went up and down with an excavator, and I feel that it might have compromised the dike that we had. Plus, it's obvious the dike wasn't high enough. And so now we have a gravel bar, which is far cry from a proper dike, but they tell me they're going to get to it. And my back door to the house, I physically have to walk down the gravel to get in the back door. As odd as it might seem to some, we are actually higher than a lot of people in North Ruckle. But still, we got inside water, yes.
Yeah.
And the yard took a beating, and all the work I did for 25 years is wrecked.
How have the river levels affected you in the past?
Most times it's never been an issue. We have a stick on a tree over there, and it seldom ever come anywhere near. I know that when I was working beside my porch, we finally left at about 8:30 that night after going since 5:30 a.m. and it was waist deep beside my porch. When my daughter came, she spent the night, and she was up looking at her computer early in the morning at about 5:30, and she said, "Dad, look at this. See that spike over there? I put that there when I got up more than half an hour ago, and it's already over here." So we quickly got busy because you could see the water was in a hurry to go up. Some of what I noticed is that there isn't enough organization happening. There were people that came with trailers, I heard the other night, to help, and they didn't know where to go. They had nobody to send them someplace, and they got frustrated and just went home.
And so what would you like to see happen now in terms of government action?
Well, I would like to think that they're going to do a dike that is properly supported and probably to the new floodplain level. I don't know how it would produce anything else or anything less. I went to the sawmill and I went to the city and I was talking about measures that I felt were proactive. What we end up doing here is all reactive, which costs way more money. Couldn't get back in the house, and so the damages most people are sustaining is because of a prolonged period. If you could have got in the next day, it would have been a whole lot less or almost nil. Right? So now that it had a chance to sit and mold, and it just made it worse. And so the end result is it doesn't matter what they would have had to pay on a bladder in the beginning. It's way more expensive right now. So it's not like it's not possible. It's just that it seems when it comes to a lot of people, especially in the government side of it, they're not comfortable with making decisions. It takes a long time for 2 or 3 of them to decide to do something. When you make a decision, you're responsible for your decision. And not everybody wants to hold that responsibility. So. But I do know, as a logger of many years in the past, the logging practices we have now with clear cutting, what we had for water going by here is mid-range water. We had the perfect storm, we had rain and we had sunshine. But I keep telling people, if you take an ice cube in August and lay it in the Overweighty parking lot, you'll get about a minute and a half. And yet when I was in the high country, logging and guiding up on the north side of the mountains, I could yet find ice in amongst the rocks or under the moss. You go there now and you will find stumps and burnt moss. Something has to change. And so they say, well, they can't make any money at it. I've done both sides. I've done with clear cut and I've done with selective logging. To do it, you could do selective logging, or you could leave more strips. Or I logged a piece above Greenwood, or Beaverdale, pardon me, and it's the winter range for the mule deer. You go over here to what they logged above Grand Forks, it's clear cut. There's a few stumps sticking out and a few trees scattered really. So there is ways that you could still make money, maybe not as much, but surely people aren't that stupid that a short-term gain is not worth the long-term suffering that people are going to have to do for the few jobs that they're going to get. And we all know that the companies, when the finances run short, they're going to move on. I'd like to see that we have a forest practice code back again like we used to have, where there's actually some strength in the forestry's ability to guide and direct. When they do all these measurements for the water, you can't tell me they didn't know the day before that we're going to end up with 3 feet of water. Now, my effort would have been totally different had I known that. I would have built a sandbar or a dike 4 wide and how many high, and I would have got all the help I could to try and protect the neighborhood because it's running right here. So what do? We put up a great big dike down the middle of the street after the business have all been damaged, and some of them forever, a little bit late. Raised this thing up 3 feet, which we could have done last year fall, early spring. I don't know, I don't have all the answers, but some of them don't seem that hard.
In this episode of the Flood Documentary series, I'm going to briefly talk about the forestry issues in the Boundary Watershed. The connection between forestry and the flood will be explored in more detail in future episodes. A watershed is a land area that channels rainfall and snowmelt to creeks, streams, and rivers. The Boundary Watershed, also referred to as the Kettle Watershed, is approximately 8,000 square kilometers, with a total population of about 12,000, with most of the people concentrated in a few small towns. The 2 main rivers are the Kettle and the Granby, which meet at Grand Forks. The watershed extends down south of the U.S. border. This map gives an idea of the cumulative areas logged in the Boundary Watershed. It shows the areas that have been clear-cut from 1971 to 2017. And while logging continues in the watershed, the data on this map only goes to 2017, and it doesn't include all of the logging data for 2017. The red represents the forests that were clear-cut from 2010 to 2017. The two larger unlogged green areas are parks. Intact forests manage our water forests, and older forests do it best. As you can see from this map, much of the boundary watershed consists of tree plantations that are 50 years old or younger. While it's true that trees are planted after logging, tree plantations are not the same as forests. Forests take centuries to develop, and they have a particular structure, composition, and function. Forest floors have a complex structure made up of organic materials, woody debris, microbes, fungi, and roots that slow down the movement of water. Clear cutting is mainly done by feller-buncher machines which destroy the soil structure, essentially by crushing it and cutting down everything in their path. They leave behind no forest floor cover, no shrubs, and no large woody debris or fallen logs that hold water and then slowly release it back into the system over the course of the seasons. Instead, we're left with very little to hold the water in. Let's go back to the harvesting map and talk about old growth management areas, OGMAs for short. Forest licensees, the timber companies, are required to maintain legally established OGMAs where a certain amount of old growth is left intact. Despite the fact that the BC government is announcing that old growth forests are not disappearing, the BC Ministry of Forests, Lands, Natural Resource Operations and Rural Development recently did an analysis of OGMAs and old forest retention in the Arrow boundary timber supply areas. It showed that the quantity of old forest protected does not meet legal targets, while the quality is very poor and not representative of actual old growth. The OGMAs consist to a large extent of younger and mature recruitment forests. Another problem is that the OGMAs consist mostly of small patches, with many less than the minimum 2 hectare size permitted and the vast majority under 5 hectares. The legal targets for old, mature forest retention are not being met in over half of the Arrow boundary timber supply area. Timber licensees are addressing legal old forest retention requirements through conservation of young and mature forests, even though old forests exist that could help meet the targets. This map demonstrates how much of the boundary watershed has been clear-cut in the past 50 years, and how much of our forest land base has been turned into tree plantations that are 50 years old or younger. There are still a few trees in the watershed that are 250 years old, but not enough. Let's begin to take a look at just some of the research that connects forestry practices to flooding. In this report from the BC Ministry of Forests in 1999, the authors point out that scientific literature suggests that the rates of peak stream flow in snow-dominated environments may increase after timber harvesting as a result of changes to canopy interception and snow accumulation, and increases in the rate of snowmelt during the spring. In another report from the University of British Columbia in 2012, the authors found that deforestation in snowy regions causes more floods. The researchers found that cutting down swaths of forest in snowy regions at least doubles and potentially quadruples the number of large floods that occur along the rivers and streams passing through those forests. In February 2020, the authors of the Kettle River Watershed hydrological models state, "These findings emphasize how increasingly large forest disturbances can have substantial impacts on both average peak flows and large destructive floods." They also quote another model that found, "Forest disturbance has been shown to increase the likelihood of very large peak flow events, i.e. 100-year return periods, which can cause flooding with potential impacts on infrastructure and human life." Let's talk a little about snowpack. Compared with intact forests, clear-cut areas collect 30 to 40% more snow, and the snow melts 30 to 40% faster. In our watershed, it is the higher elevation snow that contributes to the peak flows that occur in the spring. Much of the recent clear-cutting is happening at the higher elevations. While it's true there are other factors that contributed to the degree of flooding in spring 2018, including temperatures, we cannot ignore the connection between flooding and forestry practices. More of these factors will be discussed in future episodes of the documentary series. Meanwhile, for more information about the connection between forestry and the flood, you can watch the January 2019 presentation made by Herb Hammond and Fred Marshall, which is available on YouTube. Do you think that the river levels this year had anything to do with climate change?
Well, I just heard some of the statistics about the heat. And in 1942 or whatever, it was as hot as it was yesterday. So tell me, is that climate change? Or is that just cycles? I do know that your ice cube wouldn't have melted that fast in 1942 because there was real forests left. And when the water does start coming down, I've said this at the meeting we had at the town hall here the other day. We sat and listened to 7 or 8 presenters and they all did a great job. But what I said to the crowd at the end, I said, what we've been talking about is the result, not the cause. There needs to be some work done around the cause. I mean, until your forest gets high enough, it's going to hold some snow, but we had some excessive heat. There's nothing between the sun and that ground. Tomorrow, that's going to be really dry. That isn't going to change up on the side of a mountain.
The other question is this the new normal? You know, like, are we going to wind up doing the same thing next year, the year after, and the year after?
To me, when you hear about other areas when there's an evacuation, there's police and fire and they go knock on doors, say, okay, you have to leave. There is nothing like that here at all.
You know, you always help anybody that needs help. Doesn't matter who it is.
Flood victim furniture acquisition for Grand Forks, BC and area.
Great big shout out to the people who are supporting this work. Thank you very much. The work continues. Not only are there going to be more documentary episodes, but I've joined with some local people and we're working to protect and conserve our local forest ecosystems so that this kind of a flood doesn't happen again. If you're interested in helping with this kind of work, you can support through my Patreon account or through the GoFundMe, and the information is in the description. Thank you.